Good morning, church. Hope that you're doing well today. We had some audio difficulties with the message yesterday, so I figured I'd use this time to share with you some announcements for this week and then give you some highlights from Brother Keven's message from yesterday. Just want to make everybody aware that you guys did awesome on the Alabaster. We raised over $2,200 to be able to send overseas and abroad around the world, not necessarily overseas, but around the world. Some stays here locally to go help build churches and homes for missionaries and for pastors. And so thank you for your giving in that. I know God's going to bless that as well. I just want to remind all the ladies as well that tomorrow night at 6 o'clock, or 7 o'clock I should say, is our Ladies Live to Ministry at Miss Kim's house. And if you're not sure where that's at, you can call the church and we can give you directions. Or if you don't want to drive, the church van is going to leave at 6 o'clock tomorrow evening to head over to Miss Kim's house. So again, that's for our Ladies Live to Ministry. And then we have some activities for our kids during spring break next week, March 15th and 17th. One of the days we're going to have a picnic and some games at a park, and then the other day we're going to go bowling in Kilgore. And the van's going to run both days. And so we'll be sure to update our Facebook page and our website to give you some more information on that so you can stay in the loop. But again, if you have any questions about that, be sure to give me a call here at the church. And then I know it's kind of early, but just wanted to go ahead and announce our Good Friday service. We're going to do something a little different this year for Easter. We're going to have a Good Friday service on Friday, April 15th at 5 o'clock at Roger and Tina's house. We're going to have something for the kids, have a little egg hunt for them, and then once the egg hunt's over, we'll eat together, and then we'll finish out the evening with a quick service. And so I'm excited about that, and so I encourage you to plan on participating in that. It'll be a good time for everybody. Again, those are just a few announcements, and like I said, I wanted to highlight yesterday Brother Keven's message, and if you missed it, it was an awesome message. And so thank you, Pastor Keven, for speaking yesterday morning. He's our district superintendent here in Northeast Texas and did an outstanding job. But Keven asked us to, or he challenged us, I should say, to listen to God and not simply hear God. He challenged us to listen to God and not simply hear God. And he kind of explained what the difference is in that. He talked about how when he was in college at a chapel service at Gladewater Nazarene University, he was sitting there in chapel service and he felt compelled to go down to the altar and pray, and so he did so. And at that moment, the president of the university came and prayed with him. And at that time, he gave everything to God. He gave his wife, he had been married for about a year at the time, he gave his relationship with his wife over to God, his kids over to God, spiritually, obviously. And so he said, Lord, you know, my future, what you have planned for me, you direct that and you guide that. In the Nazarene Church, we call that sanctification. And so when we're able to, our entire sanctification, able to say, God, this is yours, do with it as you will, to glorify you and your kingdom. And that's exactly what happened. A couple weeks later, a couple months later, at graduation day, Keven said that he felt God calling him again, and this time it was into full-time ministry. And so he gave up a very prominent job with Ford Motor Company as a finance major, business major, and decided to join the church, which is a stark difference compared to the life that he possibly could have lived. But again, he wanted God's will to be done. He heard God speaking to him, and he decided to listen to God, and it made a big difference in his life. And he kind of talked about a few things over the years, how God has blessed him in that decision. He talked about it in another way. He illustrated the difference between listening and hearing, as he illustrated with our kids. You know, our kids a lot of times hear what we are saying. They hear us when we say, clean your room. They hear us when we say, quit fighting with your sibling. They hear us when we say, okay, it's time to eat. Come on, get cleaned up and let's get ready to eat. They hear us, but very rarely, it seems nowadays, that kids actually listen the first time we ask them to do something. And so it may take several times for us to tell our kids to do this or to do that. But eventually they hear us, and they actually do. They listen. And so he also referenced a couple scriptures in the Bible, a couple people in the Bible that was a stark difference between hearing God and listening to what they heard. One big example is Adam and Eve. At the beginning of creation, God said, you can have all this stuff, all these things that you see, that's around you. I'll put you in charge of over these things and all this other stuff. But there's one thing you can't do. I don't want you to eat from the tree of knowledge, right? He said, I don't want you to do that. They heard God because when they approached the tree, even when Eve brought the fruit to Adam, he was reluctant, right? Whenever it took the serpent trying to convince and persuade Eve of how this wasn't necessarily bad or sinful. But we all know that it was what the downfall was, right? And so they heard God say, don't do this, but they didn't necessarily listen to him. We fast forward a couple chapters in Genesis and we read about Abraham and Moses. Both of them heard God and they listened to God and they were blessed because of that. Fast forward to the New Testament. Many times Jesus heard God, right? And Jesus heard God daily, the scripture tells us, because he spent time with God. But he also listened to God. As a matter of fact, scripture tells us that he did nothing without without his Father telling him what to do. That when he listened to God, again, he was blessed, and fortunately we're all blessed because of Jesus Christ listening to God the Father. And so what Keven has challenged us as well as challenged me as our church here, that we need to be a listening church. We need to be a listening church. He also referenced the churches, the 7 churches in Revelations. And when he talks to each one of these churches, there's a key term there, and he says, for those of you that have ears, let them hear. Right? For those of you that have ears, let them hear. And again, oftentimes we might hear God. We might hear God ask us to do this. And we might hear God challenge us to do this. We may hear God ask us to think about this differently or go about this in a different way. But how often do we listen to God? And so that's the challenge for us this week and our church going forward. That we be a listening church. That we don't simply hear what God is telling us to do or asking us to do and we sit there and wait for somebody else to do it. No, we do it. We engage in our community intentionally, right? We love the Lord our God with our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and we love our neighbor as ourselves. We listen to God when he says, go and make Christ-like disciples, and we're intentional in that act of making disciples. And we listen to God when he says, as I have served you, so now you serve others. Let that be a challenge for us this week in our lives. Personally, let this be a challenge for us as a church that we accept wholeheartedly and we move forward being a listening church. Thank you for watching today. Have a blessed day. We look forward to seeing you soon.